Welcome to The Nation. I'm NADIAH Abdul. As Malaysia looks ahead to 2026, the property market is entering a pivotal phase, shaped by economic shifts, buyer sentiments, and evolving lifestyle needs. Joining me today is Dato Sri Dr. VINCENT TIEW, Executive Director of Branding, Sales and Marketing at KL Wellness City. Welcome to the program.
Thanks. Hi, Nadia.
And thank you for making time. I know you're a very busy man with many Ironmans to go this year, hopefully, in 2026. Now, we know in Malaysia, the demand appears to be stabilizing. We've seen that, of course, the question is around affordability, whether or not supply discipline is going to be upheld, and of course, whether this growth is going to be broad-based or selective. Now, looking into 2026, where would you describe the current state of Malaysia's property market at the moment?
Okay. So for Malaysia currently, moving into 2026, I would say that it's actually we have moved on from the post-pandemic recovery. We are stabilizing. There's no overheating. In fact, a lot of developments are quite cautiously launched by the property developers. And a lot of government, federal and state governments projects that is being implemented, whether it's Bandar Madani or Rumah, affordable homes and all that, it's steadily taking shape. And basically, I would say that it is actually one of the most, I call it the peaceful years, where everything is moving towards a very positive outlook. Positive in the sense from the private property developers, as well as from the point of view of purchasers, buyers, be it the first-timers or the property investors. Because in the last 2 years, 2024 and 2025, basically there was no big major speculative investments by the property buyers in Malaysia. Only in certain areas geographically, there are some foreign buyers. Apart from that, I would say that property developers were very cautious. Henceforth, you see the construction companies all have been recording very steady growth and having secured some reasonable good contracts in the country of being a builder. So from the perspective of economically, the price itself, moving from 2024, 2025 and now 2026, I would say that it will be still going to give us a steady 1, 2 or 3% of price increase.
I see.
Primarily not because the price increased, but because of the cost of construction had increased accordingly, a little bit here and there. Yeah.
Right. So what are some of the main drivers sort of driving this, influencing property demand this year? Is it going to be, something that, as you said, people are being cautious, but what are some of the biggest risks that they should be aware of, at least in 2026? Stable does not mean risk-free.
Yeah, that's right. In the past couple of years, there are still many stocks unsold in the market. Primarily, it's at selective geographical locations. Even the state governments or the federal governments project affordable homes and etc. still have some stocks unsold and completed. So they're still digesting this and clearing some of these stocks. So there is an important that when a home buyer, looks into buying property itself, home for their own stay, to be careful and cautious where are they buying. But the beauty is some of these are already completed. So you can see exactly surrounding you what are the choices. Now the other key potential risks will be in terms of the economy. So job stability, employment rate itself, although we are managing it quite well in Malaysia currently, but the fact is everyone is saying that cost of living has gone up. So whether you have the extra money to be careful in your employment stability and be careful that make sure you do not over-invest. So this is actually some of the area. Now on the good part is I think the interest rate, the bank interest rates, the mortgage interest rate will remain attractive, will remain low like now as compared similarly what you've seen in the last 8 years in Malaysia. So the OPR rate, or the base lending rate itself, it has been pretty predictable.
Yeah.
It could be this year itself, could be a little bit of adjustment down a little bit, possibly by middle of this year. And that's a little bit of good news for some of the genuinely people who bought for their own investments or own stay.
Dr. Sri, earlier you were talking about, how first-time owners or those who are trying to balance between how much they're earning, increase in property prices, increase of cost of living, as well as not over-investing. So we know that property prices, you said, are projected to grow between 1 to 3, but here we've got a moderate rise of between 2.5 to maybe 5%. What does this moderate growth indicate? So for first-time owners, perhaps what are some of the things that they should not do other than overinvest, right? I mean, it's always easy to say, oh, this space looks like it's a very lucrative buy, and then only to backfire later.
Okay, well, it used to be in the 90s where whenever you buy a property, upon completion 3 to 5 years down the road, and the price may increase 30, 35 or 40%, and particularly in commercial properties.
Yeah.
But nowadays, the price does not move that much upon completion. Sometimes you will be happy or lucky if you actually get it right, and when you get it rented out very quickly within the first 6 months upon completion. And having a rate of return, let's say rental return of about 4 to 5.5% is already a very good rate itself. Why? Of course, you can't expect a double-digit return, but having a 4 to 5+% means that it is higher than your bond and a fixed deposit and cost of interest rate. But at the same time, it helps you to pay off a big portion,
of your loan to the bank. Yes.
So it's actually working towards owning itself. So the key thing about being cautious here, I would say that basically it's about the type of property. Now, there's a couple of type of property that I would like to highlight that we may want to be cautious about it. That an area of industrial, we have to be very cautious about that. No doubt you have a lot of factory industrial areas that are growing and booming, but it's very selective location, and it must be very precise on what kind of industry. Is it still electronics, or is it actually the halal hub area, or is it purely a logistic play, or is it the data centers and the surroundings supporting components itself? So, another part will be the retail. A lot of people like to buy retail and commercial itself. Honestly, it's not easy to invest in retail or commercial projects that is actually strata title. So you have to look at what is the surrounding itself. Sometimes prime location, but within the prime locations itself, there's definitely always the star, the A star and also the C. But similarly, when the property developers do the pricing, the A star will have the premium, very high premium.
Yeah.
So you buy, you will be rented out. Although you may not necessarily get a very high return, but for the long term, in terms of long term point of view, you will actually get a good deal and a good investment product from there.
Earlier you said that we have to be cautious, that it is going to be growing, but there will be selective, I suppose, recovery depending on where we are. Now, for buyers and investors, what does selective recovery actually mean?
Okay, selective recovery means that not all segments will recover in the same pace and the same kind of margin. So for example, we talk about in terms of housing, residential, the mid-mass market itself would have recovered quite substantially, in particularly, for example, those below 700 and 600,000 ringgit of properties for residential. Now for commercial, if you bought commercial like shop lots or commercial or retails that cost more than 3.5 and 4 million and above, it is very tough to get that kind of rebound, you know, and the recovery is very slow. To be exact, a stagnant recovery to me means it's actually downgrading. It's actually a drop itself, you know, because of inflation and the cost and etc. That so in these areas itself that we are talking about, whether it's landed and whether it's actually high rise, the recovery on the landed actually grew very substantially. In most part of the cities and towns, even rural or cities itself, landed properties, residential, really came back very good, you know, and gave and some more, in fact, some gave a double-digit return, rebound compared to the pandemic times itself.
Do you see this across Malaysia, or is it really centered around the Klang Valley? Because I mean, just over the weekend, I was in another state driving by, and I saw so many different sort of new housing areas that are being built. And sometimes you wonder, are we building more houses than we actually need, or are we building more shopping malls than we actually need? But in this space, are all of the states recovering at the same rate as others? I don't think so.
No, not all states recover at the same rate. notably, the entire 2025, the champion will definitely be in Johor, because that city, JB and surrounding itself, recovered the most. And in fact, it was all double-digit growth itself in majority of the new property launches. But on that note, it does not mean the existing stocks were cleared as well. Because bear in mind, when we talk about the price recovery and the speed of sales itself, we also need to take note about another big element in property industry, including low cost as well as affordable homes.
Yes.
That is actually the Bumi Kota. So the Bumi Putra Kota has always remained as a big chunk or percentage of unsold units in each and every development, be it affordable homes or the private property developments and all that. So that will always be a portion of stocks that are uncleared and not yet cleared. But in terms of city, the Sabah Sarawak in many of the towns and the towns itself and cities gave very good progress, show very great progress. And interestingly, not the big cities like Ipoh gave a very big of a jump. From my understanding itself, the B towns in Perak itself actually did better in pricing. Be it the shop lots, the retail, or even the houses itself.
Do you think that's also partially because people are now moving away from city centres and into slightly more suburban areas for many intents and purposes? I think a lot of the city centres that we have are actually now also overcrowding. So we're seeing a lot more families. Like, for example, last year, quite a lot of families made the decision of, instead of being smack in Klang Valley, they went further out of, for example, even as far as Nilai, for quite a number of them in trying to find
this is only in Klang Valley.
Yes.
But if you are in Perak, for example, if you are in Ipoh, you are in Ipoh. If you work in Ipoh, you will not stay in Simpang Pulai.
Correct.
Generally speaking.
Or Taiping. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but generally, that location itself, newer products were built. And why was it in demand? And why did people buy? Because the newer products, the newer designs actually met the expectations, the requirements, and the needs of the locals and their children. Because bear in mind, a lot of children move out from their hometown, from Taipei and etc. and all that. Whether you are in Kuala Terengganu, or whether you are in different parts of Bukit Mertajam or whatever. So they moved out. So when they want to upgrade for their own family members from whatever existing houses that they stay, they are looking forward to have a properly designed lifestyle concept, infrastructure, at least paling kurang, sometimes also some clubhouse lah.
I like the fact that you said lifestyle concept. Now, I want to just sort of pause and ask you that question. In the past, people bought homes because, it was the thing to do, it was security, it was also for the family. But now a lot of people are talking about intergenerational living. There's talking about wellness spaces. They're also talking about not just existing in a space, but growing in a community, especially when we're looking at a population that's fast aging. So with that, do you see that residential segments are showing sort of a different shift in the kind of things that buyers are actually interested, and how are developers also responding to this?
Yes, exactly. So the newer trend in Southeast Asia, not just in Malaysia, but Southeast Asia, is going towards township, which a couple of our big property development companies is doing well. They have been heading in the right direction all this while, opening up new land banks, new township, launching 100 acres, 1,000 acres, 1,500 acres, 500 acres. So that direction is quite correct, because you need to create integrated, interconnected city in order to make sure and give people a chance that if you live there, even weekends, you don't even have to get back to the city. And
self-contained.
Self-contained. So that's why your example just now, for example, people moving out, example to Nilai, and etc. That works because you're still in Klang Valley.
Correct.
But in other smaller states, you can't say I stay away and all that, and then travel back, to Ipoh to work. You can't. But in Klang Valley, yes. So for example, if someone moves and stays in Kota Kemuning, they go back to Kota Kemuning, or they go back to a certain place in Klang itself. It's self-sustained. The whole township there has almost everything that you need. In fact, sometimes even better in terms of cost of living and in terms of traffic and all that. So it's very important to have this where you have all the amenities from the school, international schools, the private hospitals. Apart from the government public hospitals, the private hospitals, the medical care, it's all readily available within that 1 minute, 3 minutes, or 5 minutes drive itself.
Yeah, I think talking to people, and we've had quite a lot of conversations with people on the ground over the last few months. Some of the key things that they've highlighted, of course, schools, places of worship, and it doesn't matter what place of worship, and then of course hospitals, the medical facilities or the health facilities are extremely important, connectivity. And of course now people are talking about green spaces, because in the past they were, you know, very happy to be in sort of cut and paste lines and rows of townships, but townships now have got a lot more integrating in terms of how nature then comes back into where they live and how they actually thrive. Now I want to ask you a question. For first-time buyers, especially those who are planning to be more active this year, do affordability and financing remain a major hurdle? And what's some of the financing that's probably available by the government or other entities that will help first-time buyers?
Okay, now for the first-time buyers, honestly, I think in the past 5-7 years, it's not really an issue. Why? Because the first question is, don't buy above your means.
Yes.
So if you want, if you're earning a certain salary range, and somehow you just insist you want to buy a 700,000 ringgit house or condominium or apartment or whatever not, you're just buying above your means, and obviously your loan will be rejected.
Yes.
But first-time home buyers, the government itself, from the stamp duty waivers, from the loans from the individual banks itself, the commercial banks itself, right to some of the financing support, so that is never an issue.
Dato Sri, on screen we have here, it's talking about the 5.934 billion allocated by the Madani government from the Ministry of Housing and Local Government. We also know that there's the scheme Jaminan Kredit Perumahan, which is the SJKP. We've got the rent-to-own RTO schemes that are available, and of course the many housing incentives that are available under the budget for 2025 and 2026. So would you say this is a good year to buy?
Definitely. This is one of the best package that the scheme that has been introduced by the ministry itself. And I would say it's actually reviving and having a lot of like Bandar Madani and etc. all that. It is just going into the prime location geographical areas, finally understood that it's important and possible to build, to develop at prime areas, and no longer trying to go to somewhere, let's say, for example, I quote an example, if you want to try to go to Kuala Kubu and launch a 1,400 units, but who are you going to build for? You can launch there, but probably if you survey and you say you only probably need about 500 to 700 units. But if you go and launch and build a 1,400, you know you have a risk of the other 700. It will pick up, but it will go very slowly. And that slowly means it will cost the private developers or the developers that's been entrusted by the various government authorities to build it. So it will cost you a lot of money over there. So it's quite a wastage. If you go to, of course, 20 years ago, if you go to Rawang or Bukit Sentosa and you try to build 1,200 units of houses, it's just overbuilding.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's important.
Then you've got a lot of these white elephant projects that you go that appear to be half completed. I'm just curious, for half-completed projects like that are just abandoned, what happens to them? Are there actually regulations that says, okay, you either have to demolish it or turn it into something else, or do they just abandon it like that? Because it seemed to be just abandoned. Okay, so abandoned, that's two. Unlikely it's abandoned by the government. Yeah. But if it's a private developer is abandoning, then it's really into the big legal tussle there. It's very hard to revive it until there's a white knight that comes in. White knight comes in, you have to deal with you have to deal with almost all the banks, assuming 220 of them out of 1,000 units, 220 of them took up a loan with some banks. Yes. Each of the banks already charged on that. So to negotiate and to have the liquidator to come in and the government to step in and say that you try to breach it and then try to revive it, and do a haircut, cut loss, and then stop charging the interest, etc. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. So, which is why in the last 24 months, our current government, by KPKT and the rest, minister and the team itself, done a pretty good job by reviving a few, and those involves also some of the related Kampung Baru and etc. all developments there where they have title issue, abandoned issue, revive issue. Hey, if we resolve 1,700 units in one zone, you are saving the 1,700 people's economic and social issues itself. Correct. Because if a family gets into trouble and basically be it you have the B40, etc. If you get into trouble, that's probably the only one or two property in the whole life they will buy. And sometimes... And it's a lifeline actually. Lifeline, and sometimes the whole family
gets into quarrel, issues, all because of one house that they bought.
We've seen intergenerational debt actually happening in Malaysia because of things like this. Now, before we roll up, I wanted to ask, prices in urban spots like Kuala Lumpur or Pulau Pinang or Johor Bahru, Selangor, of course, rising, but we also see a lot of foreigners that are buying into our property, either speculation or foreigners. Do we see a lot more of Malaysia My Second Home and things like that happening in 2026? What are your thoughts?
2026, Visit Malaysia year. I'm hoping that foreign buyers will actually start to come back. Last 2 years, there was quite a big numbers of investors or buyers from China. Then there was a period that 6 to 9 months slowed down.
Yes.
A bit of hiccups here and there, slowed down. They've started to come back, but not in the big numbers and all that. Surprisingly, in Johor Bahru side, they did very well. So if you go to Johor Bahru, some projects itself, you see a lot of Singaporeans and a lot of foreigners that they actually say, oh, project in JB, near CIQ, RTS, okay, what project is that? They will buy, etc. Right. Although there were many projects that still had issues about the quality, the workmanship, some a little bit probably abandoned halfway and all that. But in general, the feel good is still there. The confidence is still there. And our advantage for Malaysia, attracting people come and invest, partly also because Malaysia is very good in medical and education. So these two sectors remains the number one and the most important segment that Malaysia government should focus.
Right.
Medical tourism in Malaysia is really good. And the private education, be it international school or university and colleges, private university and colleges, it remains really at the forefront of our country. In fact, a lot of our local public universities itself has been recording a very high, huge intake of foreign students, in 2024, 2025, and I'm sure in 2026 itself. Sometimes you won't be surprised if you look at certain of our public U itself, the percentage of the foreign students really far grew, double, almost doubled when pre-COVID itself until now in 2025. You'd be surprised if you go to UM, you suddenly see, hey, there's a lot of foreign students. I always joke with my friends and say that it's easier for foreign students to study in our public U rather than our Malaysians trying to get a place. So, but the reality is they made a requirement and we are doing well. So these two areas, Malaysia last year, we due to a great work by the MOTAC and also MHTC, we got 1.56 million of foreign patients to Malaysia. And a lot of people, after coming here, they realized and they fell in love with Malaysia. And they also ended up applying for MM2H, decided that they will come more frequent to Malaysia, and more comfortably, some of them are investing as well. Although medical is a serious matter, people come for various surgery, general health screening, IVF, and etc. But we are doing very well in these two sectors. These two sectors does not require Malaysia government any big major injection of investment.
Correct.
It is by the private sector. So I guess this will draw.
So from what I'm guessing is that in 2026 we're going to have to see things that we've done well, let's do better. If we have been attracting foreign investments, both in terms of medical tourism and international schools or IPTAs that we actually have in the country, this is something that we can definitely expand. We've also got many partnerships with international universities that are opening campuses in Malaysia now. And Malaysia is actually very well known in terms of not just wellness, but of course now moving towards aging and wellness care. We've also seen property development that's moving around, not only in the Klang Valley, but also outside in focusing for that. Now, if I asked you to kind of summarize it in one sentence, what would it be? Looking ahead, what would be some of the key opportunities that we should be looking out for 2026? 2026
onwards, in my personal point of view, Malaysia, for government part, you'll be handling the affordable homes. And that's going to be a big way. In fact, they made a statement that government will go all out to provide all the affordable homes in all various states and all that. So let's leave that to them. The requirement under low cost by the respective state governments, property developers, you need to do it accordingly. All right. Now, if you talk about the broad market itself, selectively, put data center aside, because data center in Malaysia, it's about landowners selling the land, that's about it. We don't quite generate big economic, apart from the power consumptions and all that. So if in terms of development, how we move forward, I will feel that the key area will be in the area of the aging, because the senior living is by 2030, more than 50% of Malaysians will be above 60 years old.
Yes.
So properties, products and services in this area will do very well, including
Properties, product and services.
yeah, including the pharmaceutical, including medical centers and hospitals, and most importantly, this also means that there will be a need for all the supporting concierge service and the ancillary services that supports this senior living, retirement homes sector itself. So I say that 2026, property developers and government should pay more focus on this. Yeah.
Wonderful. Love what I'm hearing. So it's properties, of course, products and services. Now, as we close, we know that 2026, the property sector will continue to play a key role in shaping how we live, invest and grow as a nation. Today's discussion was with Dr. Vincent TIEW, offers valuable perspective on where the industry is headed and how stakeholders can prepare for what lies ahead. I'm NADIAH Abdul Latif. This has been The Nation. Thank you for watching and joining us for more in-depth conversation on issues that matter. Take care.